Auzubillahiminashaitanirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. I'm your host Faizan Akwi with a prayer. May Allah keep you all safe, healthy and blessed and fill this earth with peace and justice. Inshallah. Ameen. As we all know, the British elections are starting on 4th of July, and this very important time for whole Britain, and everyone is thinking about polling, whether they are going to participate in election and who they are going to vote and why they are voting and what is the purpose of that voting. Are they voting for just to elect the MPs in their parliament to do the things they had already been doing from decades, or there are any other reasons for this election we need to think about? Are we able to expose the corruption within the British political system through these elections, or we should, or there is no way to do that? And are we able to help within like with this political corruption through our voting and through by I mean by using our votes for different like candidates who are standing for election. So who should we vote? Why should we vote? What is the purpose of this election? I mean, because there are the polls, as the polls suggest, that party which is about to come is Labour Party maybe, and generally Liberal Democrat and Labour and the Tories are the most popular sort of parties which are like usually in the power somehow in some way. And we have seen their whole whatever they have been doing in past many decades. So did we learn any lesson from them or not? They do have money and power in order to use it against the humanity, and they are supporting genocide. They have money for spending on wars and crimes and sending weapons to the people who are to the country who is participating in a genocide. But they don't have money for the housing. They don't have money for eradicating of poverty within the country. They don't have money for NHS to have that improvement which is local, which is the community, which community is looking for. So we need to think about it, where the corruption lies within the system and how it is working, and what should we do when we are using the right of vote within this country. So we do have very prestigious guest with us who would be talking about on the topic, and we do have a sister Arzu Mirali, and she is a writer, author, and researcher, editor, and founder in IHRC. We do have Dr. Sayyid Inayatullah Andarabi, who is a researcher and author, and we do have Sayyid Muhsin Abbas, who is a broadcaster, writer, and journalist. Assalamu alaikum to all of you, and thank you so much for your time. As Sister Arzu, you are supposed to leave early, so I will be starting from you. So, how do you, have you have written two articles on this topic as well in journal regarding elections as well, and you are looking into these things very deeply from a long time. So what how would you like to share your opinion on that? How should we use our vote? Should we vote independent? Should we vote Labour? Should we don't even vote? Or how these elections can expose the corruption within the British political system? Or there is no difference if we vote or not, there is corruption, and this is a corrupt system and it's not going to help in any manner. So what are your thoughts on that? Sister Arzu, I can't hear you. If you can speak louder, and if you can increase your volume somehow. No, I can't hear you. Not even now. If you can try without hands free, maybe it would work or something. I move on to Brother Mohsin, and in the meantime, you can sort out the issue. Brother Mohsin, the same question I would ask you. So, how do you see the corruption within the system, and are the election are going to help with that, or no, or is there is no use using your right of vote or something like that as a protest or something?
Well, I've got to come clean. I've never voted in my life in this country because, as I've said before, I simply don't see a great deal of difference between what's happening within the system. Underlying any nation, there are systems, there are established trajectories, there are interests, there are national interests, and those are usually dictated and controlled by the same apparatus which puts on these elections, and at the same time, those underlying forces are also very much in leagues, if not controlled by money, power, and money interests. And those money interests in this country, for me, are the Corporation of London, the City of London, where the bulk of the financial powerhouse of the nation exists, and where, since Margaret Thatcher's times, Britain has very much sold itself completely, sold its soul totally to that corporatization interest. And I think that has just made what was already a pretty bad system, because my view of British politics prior to even Margaret Thatcher is that actually what you had was a period where the parasite elitists, the money power itself, had a kind of by necessity a period where they had to go a little easy on the ordinary citizens. And by that I mean post-Second World War. I think that they engineered this kind of welfare state business, and generally lots of things which were in a way necessary because the nation had gone through 2 world wars. Their colonies, their colonialist empire had collapsed. There was a whole new scenario because the money power had shifted its wealth over to Wall Street and Washington gradually. So what we had was a nation which was going through transition, and eventually it culminated in a new kind of alliance with American banksters, and Margaret Thatcher allowed the American banks to come in, and money power, etc., took charge of this nation in a new way, on another level. And I think over the last 50, 60 years, we've now been subservient servants of that new mechanism. And it may well be that now there is a new system yet again being gradually implemented, and one which may not want the West to be, and Britain and our political systems to be quite as powerful as they were before, because they're maybe realigning the world into a new order, or that could be happening in an organic way. You can take your pick, whether it's engineered or an organic process of multipolarity. That nonetheless is happening. Within that context, the British political system will never be allowed to be fair or free or democratic. The oligarchs have their talons in the system at every level, as far as I'm concerned. The intelligence services, the deep state, the military, the civil service, the political mechanisms, the media, they're all in lockstep with that so-called national interest, which is actually a corporate interest. It's an interest of money power. It's not a national interest, because if it was a national interest, it would take into account the people's concerns. Now, why the people's concerns aren't being taken into account is because, well, they don't need to. The fundamental reality is that the people, as you pointed out, don't have basic provisions being supplied to them, and the kind of most obvious policies which go against the people's interests are constantly being rolled out. So just to list some, and we'll go into these later because I know there are other guests as well, so I won't rant on too much. But if you look at the National Health Service, nobody would say that we want to destroy the NHS. It's the one achievement after the Second World, which even I can accept was a decent thing for the public. We can argue in a different way as to how the pharmaceutical big corporations have come in to maybe use that system to push a kind of medicine which I'm not totally happy with in terms of its kind of focus on symptoms and its lack of focus on prevention and its lack of focus on real cures and the side effects that go with the kind of health provision which corporate big pharma now imposes. But that's beside the point. The concept of NHS is nonetheless something we'd support. Yet every government since that neoliberal period has deliberately undermined the NHS by privatizing it and bringing in fat cats to basically cream off huge contracts. So that's one area that I can point to. We could move on to others. I mean, in terms of military, I mean, why do we need so much of a military hardware? We're not an imperialist dominant nation anymore. We can barely defend our own borders, I would have thought, and the powers that are out there are way beyond the reach of Britain, whether it's China, Russia, or the Americans. So why are we spending $80 billion, for instance, on foreign wars, and which is what's happened under the Tories? You know, why are we spending billions on things like so-called quantum easing, which was something, again, a huge scam was carried out. Something like $850 billion of money went down the drain, where the corporate banks, etc., had to be bailed out by the public. So public taxpayers had to pay for that for that kind of scam, and the government complied with that, and the media complied with it, which tells you something, tells you that they're all in lockstep. Final point I'd like to maybe hint at is the housing. I mean, why do we need to have houses which are for profit? Why are houses now a matter of making profit? Why are houses no longer there for people making homes? And why are they so unaffordable? And why is it so manifestly obvious that that housing industry has become the cash dump or the tax which corporate banks put on ordinary people? Mortgages basically are taxes which the corporates are putting. You don't need to have prices that high, but if you built social housing, more government housing was built, it would automatically drop the housing, the private sector, and that would make cheaper housing. Everybody would get a house, and we would no longer have to make houses a business. It would be actually a welfare issue for the public, not a issue of making money for profiteering corporates. So I'll pause there. That's just a glimpse of how corrupt our mechanism is.
Thank you so much, Mohsin Bhai. Sister Arzu, can you hear me? And if you can speak, we can check if I can hear you as well. Your voice is still not coming, so if you can try check somewhere if there is some problem in your device or maybe somewhere, because from the back of studio they are saying there's some problem on your side. Maybe if you can recheck. Dr. Indarabi, can you hear me, right? How would you like to comment on what Mohsin Bhai has expressed his view about NHS, military, and other institution? Obviously, we do need institutions, but we don't need malpractices, and we don't need anything that is being used which is not in favor of the country and the nation. And we need to eradicate those aspects from those institutions. So, what are your thoughts? Do we have really a corrupt system we are living in, or is just a myth? Even though Mohsin Bhai has quite clearly explained all, but what are your thoughts on the corruption of the system and the kind of issues it has?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I haven't heard what Mohsin has said. Towards the end, I could hear about NHS. Yes, but I didn't hear full what he said. But coming to your question, what I think is on your mind. We are talking in the context of the forthcoming elections due on 4th of July. And on these elections, I must make the basic point that it's a very complex thing and with many facets. And my worry or hunch, whatever you like to call it, because I am one vote and I have a family of 7. We are all votes. We are all adults. So this very much is relevant for us. And my worry is that this is a very complex thing, and we might be missing important things. And I mean, it might be happening like, if I give you an example, if we are up for a full dinner, and we have set up, everything has been set up, and we are everyone knows that there will be a big dinner, and then somehow there's some manipulation, there's some maneuvering that we are served only vegetable salad, and we come out with the impression that we had a full dinner. I mean, it can happen. And you didn't have a dinner, but we have a full dinner. So my worry is that this election thing is a little. I have been talking about it in my family with my adult children. This has created some confusion also in Muslims, and I think of the whole population, Muslim only may be the most confused lot here in this election. I was recently in a Friday mosque, and the Imam was saying that he was insisting we should go and vote, and he said, "Be counted. If you don't vote, you won't be counted." In a sense, he was absolutely right. Yes, be counted. We are here, be counted. But is it the only way to be counted? I mean, if our youngsters, if they think that this is where they can participate politically, this is the end of it, and this is the only end, this is the only avenue, this is the only possibility, then definitely we are, we have missed the point. And I must refer, this is very important. I had read it before also, but I again went through this recently. Kaleem Siddiqui's paper about generating power without politics. You know, this was something. Kaleem Siddiqui had very deep insights into this society, into the history, into the overall what West is, what Britain is. He had a very deep insights, and he was 100% sincere, very clean man. This is unfortunate that he passed away, and whatever he was doing, that also passed away, that also died. And nothing after his death, till then, nothing has happened that would in any way, any simple, any small way, that could replace it. Nothing has happened. What Kaleem Siddiqui was saying in the generating power without politics was basically this point, that our basic point is that the scattered Muslim community in Britain, it should be one political community. Political community means that it has one voice, it has one purpose, it has one objective, and once it becomes one community, it can then decide what are its interests, what are its priorities, and how can get its things done. It may support a candidate, it may support a party, whatever, but as community, not as small groups. Now there is something going on now, which is called this Muslim vote, I think, and a friend was telling me just on Sunday, we had a meeting. He was telling me that something has come up called real Muslim vote or something, and I told him, but something might come up called saying ultra rare Muslim vote. I mean, there is no end to it. When you you can see in back home in countries, Pakistan or other places, you can see how these small groups compete with each other. So, but if there is one community, one Muslim community, and the Muslim community then articulates, the Muslim community then decides what are its priorities, that could be something credible. Because if you go by simple empirical data, if you go by empirical evidence, you can see that with so many MPs there, the number is going up day by day. With so many MPs, where do we stand? How much power do we exercise in the whole system? The answer is nothing. But when Khalil Siddiqui wrote this paper, those of us who might have seen those days when Rushdie wrote the novel, and there was a fatwa by Imam Khomeini, and the British Muslim community for the first time got galvanized. It was small communities, Bangladeshis, Indians, Kashmiris, but one single Muslim community, it became galvanized, and there was a huge procession, and Salman Rushdie was cut to his size. He could not do. He was on the way to do so many things like what he had done, but it was cut down there. It was very clear that Muslims have exercised power in this country. But how? Not through the electoral system, through coming together and organizing under leadership. And they had then decided to set up a Muslim parliament. Those are the things, the Muslim parliament, and generating power without politics. Without politics means without this electoral politics. Generating power, those are the things which hold 100% true now. But I must also say, this is important, that for those things to happen, to materialize, we need Khalil Siddiqui, and he is not there. So we need to get more wiser. We need to see what he had said. But now we have to seek our solutions because he is not here. Only someone who can mobilize the British Muslims like him can do it. What we need to do, that before getting consumed in the electoral circuit here, in the electoral system, we must organize ourselves as the Labour Party did. Labour Party originated as a movement. It was a movement. The movement organized itself. Then, as a movement, it entered into the system. But to their regret, now they themselves feel that they have been given, the door has been opened for them. But things have not changed. Things can't change. Things can't change simply because there are reasons for that. I will perhaps stop here. If you have to ask any other guest, I will come back to this, what I was saying, the reasons.
Yeah, sure. Sister Arzu, I hope you can hear me and you can respond. Well, yeah, now I can hear you as well, thank God. So, what are your thoughts? What Muslim Bhai has explained and addressed the question, and how Dr. Andarabi has shared his view regarding Kaleem Siddiqui vision for Muslim community and Muslim vote and Muslim power. And what are your thoughts, your own personal thoughts on the whole thing which is going on in terms of election in the middle of genocide? How it is important, because in general circumstances maybe we don't even care about giving our vote or sharing our views in these ways in general. But now at the time when genocide is in the middle and people are dying every single minute, these votes do count, and we can at least share something and do something through these votes. So do you think it is a good idea to vote like independent candidates instead of these parties which we have have them before from like past many decades, like Tories had were in power, and Labour were in power, and all these MPs were in power before with so what are your thoughts collectively? What kind of message you would like to share with the all the voters, especially the Muslim voters, what they should do in order to expose the corruption within the system, and how they should use their vote? Because there is one problem which I personally see as well. Sometimes people are voting because they are loyal to some party or some person, because they have been using their, for instance, there are many people who always give vote to Muslim MPs, for instance, from Labour or from Tories or something like that. So, what message you would like to give? And one more important thing is, why Muslim MPs, for instance, from Labour Party, they couldn't resign the party and stand up as an independent candidates? What do you think? What could be the reason? Because this is something I was just thinking about, and maybe you can answer it very well. So, what are your thoughts collectively?
Thank you so much, actually, for your questions, and also for Mohsin Bhai and Dr. Andrabi's contributions. They've been really fascinating, and I agree with large amounts of it, and I have some disagreements as well. And we don't have time to go into everything, but let me say what I feel, and this is my very personal view, and it's, as you know, I wrote those 2 articles. They were a review of my 30 plus years of thinking and working, and actually I did work in the Muslim Parliament, Dr. Andrabi, and I'm quite familiar with the events you were talking about, which is where I have some differences and some agreement with you. Maybe we can do a whole nother show on that, actually, because it's a lot to talk about. I think, as Dr. Andrabi said, and even Mohsin was referring to this, right, we have to protest what is happening, right? We protested in the biggest mobilization, honestly, I think, of any community at the time of Salman Rushdie. And right now, we have been, and we have always been, actually, in fairness, for the last 15 years, Muslims leading communities. It's not just been Muslims, but Muslims have been integral and probably the largest amount of people protesting about Palestine. Okay? And for me, it's my personal view, but we can use our votes on Thursday to make another protest about Palestine. Now, that means we cannot vote for any legacy party. You can't vote for any Tories. You can't vote for Labour. You can't even really, personally, I don't think you can tactically vote for Lib Dems or Reform or anybody like that who's not basically given an inch, let alone the miles and miles that we need on Palestine. Okay? Now, we have in some places, independent candidates who are standing on the pro-Palestine ticket. In some places, we have minority parties like the Workers' Party standing on pro-Palestine tickets. And while I have some big issues with some of those parties on their stances, particularly about immigration, they are being vocally pro-Palestine. They are calling out the genocide. Votes for these candidates can count as a protest, and I think people would be watching. Now, if you're in a constituency like mine, where I don't really, even with the kind of independent and / Workers' Party candidates, I'm not seeing the kind of benefit of voting for them as a protest because they haven't been strong enough. You know, you could argue that we could spoil our ballot papers. This is a well-known form of protest in this country. All those things will add up. But personally, I don't think that more than that can be the use of voting on Thursday. And I completely sympathise with people who say don't vote. I completely sympathise with people who've said Islamically, you know, whether they're Sunnis or Shias, that it is haram to vote. I can see exactly that reasoning, because as many ulama have said, you cannot vote for or take part in the politics of a corrupt system. And I don't think any of us are in any doubt that this system is completely and totally corrupt. You know, it's arguably beyond reform. We need something completely different, and drastically so. How to get to that, that's, you know, we all have to work that out collectively in this country. There isn't a quick and easy solution. So what I would say to people is that by all means express a protest on Thursday. But please, even if, let's say, you know, there are some constituencies where there are independent candidates, mashallah, like Liane Mohammed, who quite possibly could win in Ilford North. And she is Palestinian and she is pro-Palestinian, and she's also a very, very good advocate regarding the NHS, which is why I think she has a very good chance of winning. Please don't think that even if we get those people in power on Friday that anything's going to change. Right? And you talked about Muslim MPs. The thing that has happened, not just with Muslim MPs, but all MPs actually, because, let's be honest, even once upon a time, I'm sure Tony Blair, as appalling and evil as many of the things he's done now are, and the kind of direction he's still taking outside of government, once upon a time he might have been an idealistic guy who wanted to do good, right? But he entered this system, and this is how he came out of the system. In fact, he's just a different cog in the wheel of the establishment now, and this is how, if you like, the system works. It takes well-meaning people in and it turns them into part of its machinery. There isn't really a way around it. I can't see how anyone has managed to negotiate that. Even people like Jeremy Corbyn found themselves having to, who are very, very, I would never say they are corrupt, but their politics was infected with that kind of corruption when they became close to power. Okay, and they became immobilized. They made lots of compromises with exactly those factions that we are trying to really expose as corrupt, particularly Zionist politics, but also, as Mohsin is saying, the way capital has worked. And I'm not saying this is some kind of Marxist analysis, it's just a fact that money is the root of all evil in our system, really and truly, right? As well as other issues which we can't unpack now. Jeremy was not able to overcome that, right? Because instead of going for the movement, which is what we need if we're going to get real change, he went for 2017, the chance, after coming so close to get into power. We have to drop that as a model. Doesn't matter if we're Muslim or we're not Muslim. It just doesn't work. So that's my summary of my points. I have to leave very soon. So, what I would say is that, yes, Dr. Khalim Siddiqui, rahmatullah alayh, was an incredible thinker. But there have been many people since. I think what died with him, and actually had died before, was the project of the Muslim Parliament. It never got off the ground. It lacked legitimacy because it established itself on the wave of those protests. It didn't lead those protests, and it didn't reach out to the rest of the community. And so the rest of the community is not just going to follow if you just take for granted that they're going to give you their support. And I think we see that with the Muslim vote now, which is a much reduced project compared to the aspirations of the Muslim Parliament. We see that with any organisation that's trying to be representative of Muslims now. So I think we have to look at the thinkers, for example, Imam al-Asi, who was very close to Khalim Siddiqui and whose work we can read over and over again since that time, is quite inspirational. And there are many people who have taken Dr. Khalim's work and tried to kind of make it a reality in different national contexts. We've had examples, for example, from South Africa of Imam Ahmed Qasim, may Allah be pleased with, whom passed away last year, who was a leader of the anti-apartheid movement. He led the armed resistance of Qibla, which was part of the armed resistance against apartheid, right? There are many things we can learn from different examples in different countries. And after the end, the so-called paper end of apartheid in South Africa, he was very involved in politics, not, as Dr. Andra was saying, being part of the system, but actually trying to create a politics of Islam that mobilizes outside and is not about Muslims and rights for Muslims, albeit that Muslims need their own special rights in any system, but it was for everybody. And when he was asked, and he was challenged over and over again, what is the Islamic movement of South Africa? Well, you want Sharia, you want this, you want that. So the main aim of the Islamic movement of South Africa is that everybody has 1 square meal a day, because that is the issue of justice in South Africa. People are starving, people don't have food to eat. What was the use of ending apartheid when people are not eating, right? It wasn't just about saying on paper, we're not segregating you anymore. It was something much more than that. And I think this kind of way of looking and mobilizing and creating a power or a different politics that is not relying on the ballot box is what we need to ask ourselves in the United Kingdom or everywhere else, not just what we can do internally, but how do we join the dots with all the other struggles, especially Palestine.
Thank you, Sister Arzu, for your contribution and awesome comments you have shared, your viewpoint. So, Mohsin Bhai, because time is really going past very quickly. So, I just need to see what are your thoughts, what Sister Arzu has said, because do you think we do have those intellectuals, we can empower them through our like connection with them, like as a community, that connection, and we can join those doors which could empower the whole system in a reformative way, or we can bring some reforms in the system which could be helpful for humanity at large, or if within the country they can bring something good for the people who are even suffering from many problems within the country even. So what are your collective thoughts on that, keeping that time in view? I would need like 10 minutes for Dr. Narabi as well for conclusive remarks. So I would try to like if you can share your collective view and conclusive view, who should vote, how should vote, and what should we need to keep an eye on while doing that, and any kind of opinions you have.
So I can't disagree with anything Dr. Andrabi or Arzu have said. It's they're very self-evident realities that the guys have pointed out. As far as who you should vote for, again, I endorse the vote of anybody who was voting against the genocidal parties. So the lib lab con trick, I call it now. It's the liberal Labour and conservative contricts need to be rejected. It's not just about Gaza. It's about oppression around the world. It's about their plunder. It's about the loot. It's about their immorality. I mean, I think this issue of unethical politics and immoral politics being just a norm for us as a society to accept that is unforgivable. For whether it's an Englishman, a Welshman, an Irishman, a Scotsman, or a Muslim, or he's pink, black, white, I don't care. You've got to understand, first of all, what is the morality of your politics. And if you have no morality, which is exactly where neoliberal, neoconservative, secular society has taken Britain, let's restrict to Britain, then you're in trouble. Because if you no longer have any values, of course, there were no values within the empire when Britain was colonial. Prior to 1945, 47, whatever, the time when independence started kicking in for all these kind of countries or nations that they'd oppressed, people that they'd oppressed. What moralities did Britain have then? There was no morality. They were basically an imperialist hegemon, which was killing, murdering, maiming, genociding, and plundering. So, Britain doesn't have a great root in political morality. So they'd be forgiven for not really understanding what moral politics is. As a Muslim, I understand very well what moral politics is, and it means that you side on that issue or that party or that principle, which essentially stands for justice. You cannot digress from truth and justice. Truth and justice can only be established if you have the correct evidence, if you have the correct intention, first of all, to find it, and that you have some actual, baseline morality. It used to be supposedly Christianity, but there again, Christianity in the form that the British Empire rolled out, they were missionaries who were basically in leagues with the empire, forcing people to convert to a religion which told them that the white man was superior from the black man, and had all sorts of racist, imperialist, subjugation values which they endorsed the empire with through Christianity. So again, religion isn't necessarily the answer, unless religion itself has a clarity about what its morals are. Now, but I would say that certainly Islam does have clarity about what its moral position is. Certainly the Islam of Ahlul Bayt has a very clear moral ideology. And what's really fascinating about looking at the systems that are rooted in Ahlul Bayti thinking are that they understand what injustice is, because the Ahlul Bayt suffered oppression from day dot through to the entire period of the physical manifestation of that institution in the Imams. But then also, of course, we've seen the persecution of those who said they were the Shia or the followers, be that Sufi Sunnis, or be it sort of Shias, or be it whatever they were destroyed, killed, murdered, maimed, again, by an empire, by the empires of the Abbasids, the Umayyads, and subsequent empires as well. So we understand very well what it is to have a moral politics and what that moral politics must be. It's rooted in the Holy Quran. It's rooted in the Sahih Hadith, the real traditions of the Prophet, and it's rooted in the example, the consecutive example of the Imam Masumin, starting, of course, from Nabuwa through to all the Imams. So we have a template. This is important. First of all, you must have a baseline, a set of values, an ethical, a set of virtue ethics, and a set of moral principles. Now, I mean, another program we may talk about the moral principles of the Prophet, but the actual, I'm really fascinated about the solutions that the Prophet Muhammad implemented. So, for instance, Medina, when he went to Medina, and for the first time, he was given precedence to create a political system, essentially, on the fly. It could be argued that he did it as he went along, but in reality, I believe the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had a vision. He had a clear vision of how society should run, and I think that Muslims don't have that clarity because we haven't studied the prophetic system, and the prophetic system can be adapted because it's a timeless one. The principles within that system are timeless. So therefore, I would say that we need to go back, first of all, as Muslims, to study that. Secondly, we need to look at the moral politics in opposition of the conducted by the Imams, because the Imams spent 200 years nearly fighting oppression and injustice and doing it morally and with a moral politics, you see. So there are lots of examples that, first of all, we need to know, which most Muslims do not know. The first thing is our ignorance and illiteracy about prophetic moral politics is manifest, and we need to correct that. Secondly, I mean, I think what we're talking about practically now is that requires think tanks, and that requires money, that requires brain. Yes, it requires a knowledge economy, and yes, in answer to your question, we do have people out there who have the intelligence and the ability to set to work on this. Yes, we do have movements of sorts which are doing their own little bits, but in very small ways. But most of them lack the resources. Most of them, that certainly is one of the biggest problems, because to come up with policies and to come up with strategies and come up with real effective campaigns to be able to teach people those policies and those practicalities, you need money. You can do it on the fly, as they say. We can do it by by virtue of our own voluntary contributions, yes, but unless there is a sort of also, as for instance in Watford, the campaign I've had, we had some generous donors who were independent-minded people who funded the leaflets and funded the practicalities and funded much of that practical side of it, the media element. The hell of a lot was voluntary labor, free video making, free ideas and thinking and all the rest of it, and the campaigning and the canvassing. So, but you can see that without that fundamental economic backup, we'd have struggled. We would have struggled with one element of that. And the ordinary people need to understand that they need to put their money not just in charities and that will look after the welfare of the community or abroad. They need to rechannel some of their resources towards their political vision and towards a moral prophetic vision. And it's got to be a moral prophetic politics which takes into account the reality of our surroundings. So we live in a non-Muslim country. For people to start thinking about a Sharia-based politics, which is going to be implemented, is absolutely stupid. It's ridiculous. You'd have to have something which looks at the model of, for instance, the Hezb in Lebanon, where they've come up as a movement, a social welfare movement, and a military defensive movement. But then they've taken on an entire power, and at the same time, they've negotiated their position with Christians and with secularists and other people in Lebanon, because Lebanon is a multicultural society, multi-ethnic society, multi-religious society. But you can see where the model worked, as operates there in a very interesting way. And I'd say that the same thing applies here, that we have to look at our brothers in humanity and our brothers in faith, and we have to come up with common ground, which can be done because the Quran gives us many arenas for common ground and to create a politics of morality, which I think a lot of the awakened British people would be able to buy into. But we have failed in making it clear what that Islamic moral politics is. And the people who shouted loudest and who the media has allowed to come forward have been absolute nutcases. Anjum Chowdhury and all sorts of other people. They're either diehard secular neoliberal fake Muslims who have no idea about Islam and any moral Islamic politics, but just use the word Muslim. Or we've got on the other extreme these takfiri crazy people who have got no idea about how to adapt to any society. And in fact, both of those are probably on the payroll of neocon, neoliberal think tanks and deep state activities. So we've got an enemy within. We've got a couple of fifth columns which are wolves in sheep's clothing. So they come up and they pretend to be us, and they go up and end up representing us one way or another, because those nutcases are all that the media picks up on. They say this is what Islam is, and they've scared the general British public away so far from any Islamic solution that for me to even talk about that without first explaining myself thoroughly would be ridiculous. And most English people, if you ask them, or most British people, if you said that there was an Islamic moral political solution, you'll have a hard time convincing them that that is anything good for them. That's the kind of propaganda and Islamophobia that the media and the Zionist media particularly has rolled out to ensure that we have a problem in terms of being even able to voice a solution coming from an Islamic rootage. That doesn't stop us doing it. And in conclusion, I'd say that I agree with this idea of developing think tanks, financing our researchers, gathering the resource pool that exists, because clearly there are a huge number of university students that are capable of PhD level research. There's a huge resource pool there in terms of not only thinking, but there's also a financial resource pool. If we were just to tax things like the halal meat industry, and because they rely on this, if we were to take a percentage of that money that we spend on meat, for instance, and channel it towards, as one of my colleagues has once put, that would be enough money to finance your political think tanks and your development of a real position. Because you cannot argue your position in front of the electorate unless, first of all, you have this really solid background for ideas, really solid statistics and evidence of why there is a problem with the current system and where the problem is. And you can't do it unless you can then project that in lots of ways, whether it's memes, videos, through debate, through discussion, through informal canvassing, through telling your friends, through university lectures, through making political, setups in each constituency where you exist. This is a 10, 15-year process. And by the time this process is finished, Baizaji, or even gets going, we will have a population in this country of around about 12 million Muslims. If those Muslims still believe in Islamic values and the Quran and still have some kind of inkling, if they haven't become neoliberal secularists by then, the next generation, then that 12 million to 14 million would represent something like 25% of the British population. Now, Reform, the right wing, and the British establishment know this. They're already making plans for the fact that this will exist, yeah? We are not even thinking beyond tomorrow. We're reactionary, and again, of course, this protest vote for Gaza will be a reactionary thing, and huge resources are going into it. Some people are doing it for maybe their own ego. Some people are doing it genuinely. Some people are doing it efficiently. Others are doing it less efficiently. A lot of it is being taken advantage of by the likes of the Workers' Party, who tomorrow we don't know whether that will remain on the moral values that I'm talking about. So I just think that we need a massive amount of thinking, a massive amount of gathering together of the pool of resources and the knowledge economy. And I'll shut up here because I'm sure Dr. Andrabi, I might have taken some of his time. I'll let him come in as well.
Thank you so much, Mohsin Bhai. And Dr. Andrabi, can you hear us properly? And if you can respond us, I would like to ask you what Brother Mohsin has mentioned through his suggestions and what is coming up and how should we respond to current situation and the future as well. So what is your opinion on that? And you were suggesting some kind of reasons when you were discussing Kaleem Siddiqui vision, and he is not there obviously. So do you think we do still have those intellectuals, those kind of intellectuals, and we can get together and we can create a power, power of intellectuals who can move the society based on the ethical moral value, as Sayyid Mohsin Abbas has mentioned. So what do you think, if we, for example, really need to do it now, or we need to continue what the vision Dr. Kaleem Siddiqui has given. If we keep trying to continue that, so where should we start, what should we do, and where are we standing, and what is your message for voting for on 4th of July? Collectively, how would you conclude? You have like
Yes, yeah,
7 minutes.
I will go, in a sort of roller coaster speed.
We have 7 minutes,
Yeah,
so keep an eye on the time as well.
I'll make quick points. First, the answer to what you were saying at last, that are there intellectuals, or can we do that again, or what Kaleem Siddiqui was saying? I say that we can and we will. Not only that we can, we will. We have to float ideas, we have to mobilize people, we have to mobilize minds, not necessarily in these days, election days. This is an ongoing job, and we will do it, inshallah. And I have been, Mohsen and I, we have been thinking about, we will, inshallah, it is doable. That's it. And the other thing I refer to what Arjun Mirali was saying about to vote, to protest and change. That's a bit, I don't say yes or no to that. I don't say that's not right or that is right, because that seems to me a bit of complex equation. If I was in Pakistan and when Imran Khan was arrested, victimized, then they conducted elections on the 8th of February. The motto, the call there was go and vote and take revenge by vote. That was a one-to-one relation. That was like 2 plus 2 is 4. That is, go and vote for Imran. Imran will come forward and he will set things right. This was a 2 plus 2, 4. It was a simple equation. But here the equation is something like which I can't resolve in my mind at least up to Thursday. I don't think I can't, so I'm not going to vote. That's it. But because I can't understand this, that how I can protest by vote and change by vote. One thing, yes. One thing I must say. One thing seems to me, intellectually tangible. I can get hold of it. That is, if a member of parliament, or if someone who is standing for the election now, if he had supported Israel, if he had opposed ceasefire, and now if we don't cast vote for him, and as a result, if he is defeated, well done. By not casting vote for him, and which caused his defeat, brilliant. That is we have really taken a revenge. So that's it. But coming to the point which I had left, which I told you I will come to it again, that needs some more time and more detail. But I will simply I will put it very briefly that we should be absolutely clear in our minds about the political systems at this moment existing in the world. Apart from Iran, and this is a very emphatic apart, because only Iran has a different political system. Rest, what is politics and political system in the rest of the world, it is what some scholars have called biopolitics. It is the politics of bodies. It is the politics of our material beings, of our material welfare. When it comes to our material being, we are measurable. Everything can be measured. What are our needs, our wants? How can we be satisfied? How can we be manipulated? How can our subjectivity be determined? This is all controllable. And that's why we are controlled. The more modern we become, the guy in India, Pakistan is not that much controlled as I am here in Britain. We are controlled because our politics is politics of bodies. British political system is the political system which addresses the issues of bodies. You might remember, Faiza, I asked you 2-3 months back when genocide was at its peak in Gaza. and there were huge demonstrations on the roads of London. And I was asking you, and I now think, and I thought soon after that I was not asking, my question was not really sensible. I was asking you, let us raise the question, who represents us? If we are coming, if we are heard, if we have feelings, who represents our feelings? We have to go to Trafalgar Square. Is there nobody who can speak for us in Parliament? But that was, in a sense, that was a stupid question, because that is not what Parliament is meant for. That's not what political representation is meant for. That is beyond our material being. That relates to values, ideology, faith, belief. Political systems are beyond that. They don't deal with that. So we have to have a realistic understanding of this political system, and we have to wisely relate with it. I mean, these are individual decisions. My decisions, I won't vote. In my home, my daughter is going to vote. So these are individual calculations, but what the bottom line is, all of us need to get our heads absolutely clear about it. That what is this political system, what are we interacting with, and what should we expect of it. So that's what I can tell you in brief. But this is something which needs to be explained in detail. But for now, I will stop here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Andarabi. Mohsin Bhai, I'm really grateful for your time as well, and Sister Arzu was with us as well, so I'm grateful for her as well. I'm sure, we, inshallah, be able to involve in those activities which are empowering and which are positive and which are based on true values, ethical values, moral values, and human values, and which can obviously unite us all in some way with public in a broader perspective. So I'm very grateful for your contribution, and I'll move on to our end of the show now, because time is really up now. So inshallah we'll see you next week with the message that everyone should use their vote wisely, and should at least I think so, I personally think maybe giving your vote to the independent candidates would be better, who are fighting for instance Gaza or genocide in Palestine. So or maybe anyone who is not from Tories or these liberal democrat or something from Labour, because the weak the government is, maybe the independent candidates might help in many ways. So at least they might help with our national, local, general issues which are related to NHS, housing, poverty, eradication of poverty, and things like that. So there are so many things. So we all should understand the politics of Britain, and we should, as Dr. Andarabi suggested, that we should understand the system and what is our role in it. So we should do that. I'll take a leave now, and inshallah we'll see you next week. Take care, and Allah Hafiz.